Hello, everyone. Welcome to Kelly's Taboo Terrors and Visceral Pleasure in Extreme Cinema 4. I love bringing folks together to discuss my favorite genre of film, and that's extreme cinema. This is the rebirth of this annual event. So if you'd like to get involved in the future, please reach out to me. Yay, I'm back. This is back. It's going to be a mainstay. So folks better be aware. In 2019, I found myself drifting more towards disturbing, transgressive films. Conventional horror just wasn't doing it for me anymore. So once I dove headfirst into the abyss of the extreme, I've never looked back. So in 2024, I relaunched Kelly's Taboo Terrors as my own fully fleshed out podcast because I thought it was important to keep my voice out there, as there are only really a handful of women dissecting these types of films. And I do enjoy traumatizing you all. So, content and trigger warnings. Kelly's Taboo Terrors is just about that, taboos. So, let this be your one and only reminder that viewers' dismemberment is strongly advised. So, the second panel for today is based on a true story, Snowtown. First, for this event, we are going down into the darkest minds of true crime history with Based on a True Story, films based on the real life and murders of people around the world. For this panel, we will be tackling the Snowtown Murders, aka the Bodies in Barrels murders from Southern Australia that occurred between 1992 to 1999. This remains and is one of the most disturbing and haunting films I have ever bore witness to. So let's get the guests in here so we can start talking about this very bleak, dark movie. So, first up, a returning guest, Kelly McNeely. Kells is the co host and enthusiastic mixologist for Black Fawn Distro's YouTube channel, which also houses her Streams and Screams review series. She can be heard as a co host on the Murmurs from the Morgue podcast and has appeared as a guest on many others, including A Year in Horror, Our Bloody Obsession, Eyes on Horror, The Rockman Power Hour, I Spin in Your Podcast, and Void Video. Kelly has written extensively for iHorror.com. She also represented the site as an entertainment correspondent for the List TV and has published articles for Modern Horrors, 1428 Elm, Salem Horror Fest, CG Magazine, and Grimm Magazine. For creepy crafts and cocktails and lots of dog and cat pics, you can track her down on Instagram at Kells McNells. She talks fast and drinks often, but is mostly harmless. Mostly. Hey, Kelly, thanks for coming back and joining us.
Thank you so much for having me back, Kelly. It's such a joy to be here. As always, love chatting with you about the dark and disturbing. So thank you so much for having me back.
Of course, the other Kelly is always welcome back. Next up is another returning guest and a panelist from the panel number one on Thanatomorphose is Kaz. Kaz is a rainbow-freckled horror critic and aspiring extreme horror author, currently living in the Scottish borders. She writes reviews, dissections, and analysis of horror and genre films explored through the lens of neurodivergency. Her moniker is the Weird Word Witch, and they are a gun for hire, currently writing film reviews on behalf of Vertigo Releasing, Signature Entertainment, and Morbidly Beautiful. Kaz has an extreme horror book column with the morning paper. Their favorite horror subgenres are New French Extremity, Ozploitation, folklore, body horror, indie, and cosmic horror. We have a third panelist. I'm not sure if Derek is here yet. Doesn't look like he is here. So we're going to keep on going. If Derek does decide to join in and join us on the discussion, we will jump him in wherever we're at. So, Derek, I hope you are able to jump in soon. So, I'm your host, Kelly, obviously, from Kelly's Taboo Terrors and the other half of Spincers of Horror with the podcast I Spit on Your Podcast. All right, let's get into the grimy, dirty, macabre details and discussion on Snowtown. So, first off, an opening, an easy question, easy, let's say, our history with the film, our relationship with the film, the first time we watched it, our initial impression. So, I'll jump out there and say, I saw this for the first time about 5 or 6 years ago. I watched it with an old partner of mine. And once it was over, I was haunted, deeply disturbed. I had to sit there for a while, just not moving, not thinking, just hitting. I hit with like a ton of bricks, like this pit of despair, this brick of despair. My partner at the time was like, eh. Not phased by it at all, but he had seen it before, so that's fair. But it's haunted me ever since, and here we are talking about it today. So, Kelly, the other Kelly, what's your history with Snowtown?
So you say this is an easy question, but this is never an easy question for me because I have a terrible memory for when and how I first saw
Fair,
movies. I'm
fair.
awful at that. So I never remember when or how I first saw the film. I just remember being like very affected by the story and the editing as well. Like is very, and I'm sure we'll talk about it in depth, but it stays with you. Like the way the film is shot, the way that it's cut is just like it latches its claws into you. And it's I probably first saw it around the time I was like on an Australian horror tear. I was watching like Wolf Creek, Hounds of Love, Killing Grounds, Babadook, Wormwood, all that good stuff. The Loved
Yeah.
Ones, fantastic. And so don't remember when that was, but sometime after 2011, probably.
Fair. Kaz, how about you?
I seen it when it first came out. Again, I was doing like an Australian movie run, like Marathon with an X. Um, I have a little bit of morbid history with a true case. I had a friend in school from Darwin on the south coast of Australia, and when the case broke in 1999, she would be sending me like local
Ooh.
newspaper articles and clippings. I need to look those out at my mum's house to see if I still have those. So that, as like I was about 12, 13 at the time, that happening really stuck in my mind. So when the film came out, what, a good 10, 15 years later, it really deeply affected me. Seeing it from both sides as like great work of fiction, but also the true crimes that inspired it are just harrowing.
Yeah, yeah. This one is a movie for me that never gets easier to watch. Like sometimes some movies do. This one never. Nope. Nope. Absolutely not. It's just 2 hours of grim dark despair, for lack of a better word. And I love it for it, but it is one of the toughest watches I've ever had experienced, ever been privileged to.
Mhm.
Anyways. Well, because this is based on a true story, the Snowtown Murders, let's get into a little bit of the real case that this movie is inspired by. So, Kazi kind of already answered this first question of mine was how much about the case did you know before going into the movie, or like did you know anything about this real life case before going into the movie? Kels, why don't I start with you? Did you know anything about the case whatsoever, and did you seek out more information afterwards?
Oh, do we want to do introductions and then I'll launch into that?
Yes. Oh, hello,
Yeah.
Derek.
Hi, sorry
Hey.
about that. I some time zone mix-ups there, you know.
That's okay.
Yeah.
We don't have time to do a full introduction, but thank you, Derek, for joining in. You're actually coming in at a good time. Um, yeah, so right now we're getting into the real case, the real Snowtown murders. Yeah, so it's okay, Kelly. Why don't you get into that?
Sure thing. So I think with this film, I think I'd kind of heard that I knew it was based on a true story. I don't think I really knew too many of the details about that story, but I think that was kind of a really interesting and challenging way to watch the film because the film doesn't really hold your hand through what's going on, which also makes it that much more horrific and terrifying when you really kind of catch on to what's happening. John Bunting, he was like a sadistic megalomaniac with a savior complex. He really thought, he wanted to think, I should say, what he was doing was right and was good, but he kind of flirted with white supremacy through like racist literature. He was homophobic. He believed that homophobia was an indication of pedophilia, which is like obviously in no way, shape, or form. But we never really get into John's personal history with abuse in this film, which he was physically and sexually assaulted by a friend's older brother. I think when he was around 8 years old or something. It's not really 100% certain because he never really reported it to his parents or anything. And I think the assaulter died in a motorcycle accident a couple years later. But he's particularly affected, and as much as this is a word that kind of triggered by CSA. So he was very much thinking he was doing the right thing. As you mentioned, he killed 12 people between August 1992 and May 1999, I think.
Hmm.
I don't think he ever really heard the term "don't shit where you eat" because, like, he knew everybody that he was killing. There was no, like,
Absolutely.
random grabbing strangers. It was all people that he knew in some capacity, whether it was, an acquaintance or a friend or something along those lines. This was all people that he pulled from his personal life, which is why it's so almost impressive that he was able to go sort of undetected for so long. And even,
Mm.
some of the folks in his immediate circle knew he was doing this. He wasn't acting alone, and still he was able to get away with it for quite a long time. He also stole like $97,000 or something in Social Security checks from his victims.
Yeah.
This wasn't really like a financial gain motive. He just wanted to feel powerful. He had like a righteous pretension about it, and
Yeah.
the whole thing is just like a very complex story because on its face you hear like, oh, he was killing pedophiles and rapists. And you're like, that's complex. Do I hate that? And then you learn more about it. You're like, oh no, I do hate that. Yeah, absolutely, I hate that because it's all entirely coming from this place of just wanting to be a powerful person and feeling like he's not.
Absolutely. Derek, since you've jumped in, before watching Snowtown for this first time, did you know anything about the case? Did you seek more information afterwards? Like, did you know, like, yes, did you know going into the movie, like anything about it?
Well, actually, I had watched Snowtown for the first time like 3.5 years ago, and I didn't really like. It was just kind of like casual watch. I didn't like sit down and try to like see what it was really about. But when I spoke to you about doing this, I before I rewatched the movie, I actually looked a lot into the case, and yeah, it's like he was like a Charles Manson type, like megalomaniac type of dude. It's like the reason you were talking about him being able to get away with it and like being all these people, it's because like a lot of the people he was around in that community like had a general idea like or like some sort of idea what he was doing, but he was such a master manipulator that like people really like believe like he was like some sort of hero, like he was like some sort of folk hero that was like serving the people, when in actuality like not a lot. Most of the people he killed weren't pedophiles. They were like LGBTQ people. They were just people he didn't like, drug addicts. Like just anyone in the circle that he felt threatened by or he just didn't like in general was a victim. And like he kind of like kind of does what like modern American politics do. It's like they were evil because they did like they were gay or they were drug addicts. And he brainwashed the whole community into like believing that. And it's crazy when you see him because he's this little like shit, like, and he doesn't look like anything
Yeah.
at all, but
Yeah.
he like he's just like, and like I don't know, just like a part that they don't talk about in the movie that I found interesting when I was reading up on the case is that with a lot of like the main perpetrators, Bunting, Wagner, even James or Jamie, is there was a lot of like internalized homophobia. Like they it was reported that Wagner and Bunting probably had a relationship like behind the scenes, and it was just like their inner hatred coming out in just horrible, disgusting ways. And yeah, just watching the movie and then reading up on it again, it's just like it's mind blowing, like the levels of like just the layers of what went on here. But yeah.
For sure. Kaz, how about you? Did you know much? Oh, I'm sorry, you did say that you kind of had a bit of a personal relationship. I knew somebody that did have some kind of, not saying you're connected to it, but you were kind of there in real time or at
Mm.
least privy to it in real time. So watching this
Hmm.
movie would have had a much deeper impact on you.
What I appreciated about the film, just to follow on from what everyone said, is Bunting's charm. I think the reason he was able to basically pull the wool over everyone's eyes in the community, he took a very cult-like approach. It was very cult speak. You're either with me or you're against me. And it was also like American politics, isolate and divide and conquer. So Bunting would literally like weaponize people's secrets against him, the fact that they were gay. He had dirt on everyone in that town. And I think what I appreciate about the film compared to real life is there's a lot of like turning a blind eye in the film. There's a discussion at the dinner table when one of the mothers says her friend knowingly invited a paedophile into her house who abused her daughter and continued to have him in the house. Again, it says John is very aware of people wanting to keep the peace, turning a blind eye to something that's difficult or something you don't want to currently deal with. And he weaponized that against everyone. Everyone with the head in the sand kind of response to, I don't want to hear about abuse, I don't want to see it, so it doesn't exist. And I think that's why he was able to do this for like a decade. And my friend, the connection I have is my friend was further up the coast. So she was in Darwin, this all happened in Adelaide. And it was interesting hearing her perspective about them being a somewhat isolated community.
Yeah.
Adelaide is quite a new startup. They were only established in, I think, 1826. And it was originally meant to be like a work colony. And then he started bringing in Muslims, started bringing in Christians. And it was just this melting pot of all these different beliefs and ideologies. And at the center of it was a Christian town. And that's where everything started to fracture and people started to, us against you, you against me, don't bring your LGBT stuff to my door. So I appreciated the film just showing all that just as is without glamorizing it or painting a villain. John's a villain, but I think the real villain of Snowtown is turning a blind eye and to abuse and
Yeah. The
injustice.
like I was gonna say the cult-like mentality. Like you see those meetings or like the gathering of the folks, and you kind of have John Bunting as the ringleader, our sadist, our sociopath. Everyone's talked about him being like this master manipulator, absolutely. But he, in his mind, he's like attracted to certain types of people, right? Wanted to be seen as this powerful leader. So he preyed upon the vulnerable, the weak, abused people that were desperately looking for somebody to care for them. Reading about this because I don't know that much about Australia, but this is set in the suburbs of Adelaide, which in a very low socio-economical place, minimal opportunities, so many people on social assistance, crime ran amok. And you can kind of see that in the film too, like kind of the desolate, there's garbage everywhere. There's like refuse, and you can just tell that that's the environment. So that would be a prime picking place for somebody like John Bunting to come in, and especially into that family, that very troubled, very poor family, to come in as like this white knight and help take care of them. So he sets everything up so nicely, again, as like doing good work, the vigilantism, but then the dark underbelly. And he's such a disgusting character.
Yeah, and I appreciate you mentioned Charles Manson as well, because like you look at how he kind of structured his inner circle, and like Robert Wagner was like his Tex Watson, like his right hand, like enforcer kind of guy, and how
Absolutely.
he again like ingratiated himself in this family. Like Elizabeth Harvey, I really appreciate how they played her in this movie because she seems like she's a tragic figure. She's kind of a victim of circumstance throughout this film, and she knew what John was doing. I'm sure when Troy went disappearing, she probably could connect the dots a little bit there. But I appreciate also that the film is told from Jamie's perspective as opposed to Bunting's, because it allows Bunting to kind of stay as this like elusive, domineering character that we kind of see, and you kind of look up to him for the first like third of the movie, the first third of half of the movie, until everything starts to kind of fall apart. But it's definitely not like glorifying the acts. It's sort of starts with grooming and manipulation, and again, like it's that different kind of cycle of abuse. I think that way that he kind of works with Jamie and works with the family, works with the kids, and yeah, it's definitely like it's a different way to approach that continuation of that abuse cycle, and so he's such a fascinating character, John Bunting. Everyone involved is like such a curious case because there's so much, like Kelly was saying, that kind of went on socioeconomically and in their environment and in their lives that kind of made them feel like this was okay, and that this was something that should be celebrated, that he was doing a good thing.
Yeah, so like to like kind of build on that, a part I really appreciated that I thought was extremely effective is that the movie only like really shows one scene of SA and one scene of like torture, and it's the same person. It's stepbrother Troy, and so in the SA happens towards the beginning, and it's like you're like fuck this guy, I can't wait to see him get hers, da da da. And then towards the end, when he does, when they do get him, it's like horrifying. It's like, is this what I really wanted? It's like, I don't know. And then there was like, with Jamie, it's just, he picked Jamie and chose Jamie because Jamie had gone through, he was schizophrenic, he was slightly cognitively impaired, he had years of abuse. And so like, Bunting came in with this like fatherly, like, oh, I'm going to take you under my wing. No one's going to ever hurt you again. But then spun it and suddenly got aggressive. And because he knew Jamie's background, that Jamie's not going to say no in the face of aggression because he's so used to being abused. And like, he took full advantage of that. And like, so it's like, I mean, it's like debated about like, like how Jamie's involvement should have been tackled. But he actually, at the beginning of this month, got paroled. And I believe that was earned. He deserved that. Because like he was a victim and like he did horrible things, but I feel like he was also a victim on top of like everything else. Yeah.
Yeah, and he willingly like turned in everything he knew to
Yeah.
the cops because I think, when you're in interrogation, the number one rules: don't say anything, don't do anything unless you have a lawyer there. Because they told him, we'll let you go if you tell us everything, and so he did. But they're allowed to lie in interrogation rooms,
Oh,
so
yeah.
he was imprisoned for 26 years, and I agree. I mean, it's he's definitely a very tragic figure, but I have like I don't feel bad about him getting parole. I think that's something that again, he's completely a victim of circumstance. He was completely
Oh,
manipulated,
yeah.
completely like abused through this cycle. So yeah, I don't feel bad about it. I feel like I should, but I don't. I don't know.
Because
It
it's
makes me
like,
think
it's
of.
like, oh, sorry, go ahead.
No, continue. Yeah.
Because someone like Bunting and Wagner, they deserve to be in prison for the rest of their life
Oh,
very easily.
totally.
But
Yeah.
like Jamie, he served his time, I feel like, and deserves another shot. That's just my opinion. I don't know.
With Jamie as well, it makes me think of like in the UK law, and I've done a lot of work with people with severe mental health issues and intellectual disabilities and stuff. There's a thing called capacity. So you need to determine, does the perpetrator lack capacity? Do they lack the understanding to differentiate between my actions equals someone else coming to harm, right and wrong? So Jamie, what I liked about the film, it empathizes Jamie. It never empathizes John Bunting.
Mhm.
You don't give a fuck what he's been through. It doesn't say, oh, poor John, he went through this in his childhood. That would be the difference, I think, between, I think one of the question prompts, true crime and exploitation. Exploitation comes in if you're trying to empathize your audience with the killer. And, with Bunting and with Jamie, yeah, there needs to be some sort of like conversation or debate around that young man's capacity and his able to to understand.
Totally.
Oh yeah, because like I actually looked into it. Like, why didn't he get treated like a mental health patient? And it was just because like the Australian like officials, like it was such it's the worst worst crime probably that's uh, been that's happened in Australian history. And
Yeah.
so they just like they needed to like put him up, like put him up on the cross, like look, we're
Yep.
doing this to him. He's evil too. So it was showmanship pretty much, like how they treated him in the legal system.
He's kind of like a
Posturing.
sacrificial lamb. Yeah.
Yeah.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Exactly.
Yeah, I'll say too that I'll agree with that. I am glad that the film was seen through Jamie's eyes because
Mhm.
I think he was a victim in this. We see it. It's interesting because I think the film portrays so many accurate aspects of the case, and of course we have to fill in some of the blanks that perhaps we didn't know, or just just the public didn't know, right? But Jamie, being like you said, being born into a troubled family, dad abused him, and Bunting comes in again, this father figure. And offline, Kelly and I were chatting about some of the like just the how mundane some of the shots are too. It's just like your regular life, like kids riding their bikes, getting ice cream, which then they do smear on the pedophile's house, which I get that. But that first hour of the movie is like leading you up to the devastating second half of the movie. And Jamie, I was looking into this, like convicted at the age of 19, which means when all of this was going on that he was at least led privy to, he's like, what, 13, 14, 15 years old? Either way, he is a child. 19, still a baby,
Yep.
too. involved in any of this. So I was glad to see that it was seen through his eyes, because I think we don't see enough true crime films that are shown through victims' eyes. You know what I mean?
Hmm.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
And I do, again, kind of as I mentioned earlier, I do appreciate that it's shown through his perspective. It's shown through his eyes, so it's not glamorizing or glorifying the violence and the events that are happening. But again, there's no hand holding through the story. Like, you
No.
kind of see the passage of time through hair growth, which
Hmm.
is such a great little detail of like kind
Yeah.
of depending after they shave the head, like how long the hair is getting is kind of how
Yeah.
long you kind of get to see that time has passed. And Jamie's story even isn't really told really directly other than that scene with Troy, which is like really directly. It's very much a show don't tell kind of film. Like I was thinking
Hmm.
about this upon my second rewatch, and the opening sort of monologue, I guess, from Jamie talking about that dream he
Yeah.
had. I realized that's the
Mm.
most you hear him speak in the entire film.
Yep.
The rest of the film, he's very passive. He's very, you know, he's sort of reserved. He sort of feels like he's regressed. It's a defense mechanism essentially, but he's kind of so withdrawn and so shut off and walled away from everything that it really kind of makes you feel for him so much more because like he's truly out of his depth with this whole situation. And you know, the music also, just complete side note, talk about the film, is just insane. Like I might be wrong about this, but I feel like the music isn't really present in the first half. It doesn't really, at least not
Yeah.
Hmm.
noticeably so, until the reveal of John's hobby, as it were.
Yeah.
But it's like it's sparsely used, but it's such uncomfortable music. Like
Hmm.
again, Kelly and I were chatting online, offline about this, and about how like deeply uncomfortable this film is. It's the experience of watching the film because it is. You experience the film. You don't enjoy the film. You experience the film. The film happens to you. I feel, but it's just such a deeply uncomfortable experience, and they make you feel that way through having that disquieting kind of tonal sound bath essentially. um, and also just a note as well that the director, I think apart from the man who played John Bunting and Barry, the actors were all locals with no acting experience. The director just kind
Yeah.
of found them around the area where the murders had occurred, and he grew up in that area as well, I believe. So he kind of wanted to be able to put a little more context and depth and humanity onto that area. I guess the actors that he brought in, he had to kind of convince them to be in the film. They didn't really have like jump in like, wow, I'm going to be a movie star right out the gate, which understandable reading the script. I would probably be a little bit hesitant as well if that was presented with me. I'd be like, oh. But they all do such an incredible job because there is that sense of realism. There is that sense of just
Yeah.
true humanity um, that you just, I don't know, it just feels so personal.
Yeah. I'm glad you brought up the fact about bringing locals in as our actors, because I didn't know that. Thank you, but you can feel it. This movie feels so real. So thank you for bringing that up. Absolutely. But yeah, can we just give a shout out to the performances in this movie? So
Yeah.
Lucas Pitaway plays Jamie. This is his first role ever. He
Oh yeah.
is just his
And he hasn't
performance.
really done much since either. You know,
What's
it
that?
was kind of like this was his big one and done. I feel like because he hasn't really done much of anything
Yeah.
since then
Mhm.
either in
Yeah, he's
acting.
kind of yeah, he's dabbled. I looked up his IMDb. It's like some short films and this and that,
Yeah.
but holy moly, to come out of the gate with this, and he is so incredible at playing a broken child. Like
Mhm.
like just dead eyes. Like it's
Yeah.
I think that's probably some of the most effective and affecting aspects of this movie is Jamie. Cass,
Hmm.
go ahead.
I feel like the way it affects you, and particularly around Jamie. What I noticed about the film, it's very, very intimate. It feels documentarian. The way the camera, people are kissing, people are eating, people are smoking. The camera's right in their face.
Yeah.
And what I noticed when John is initially trying to groom Jamie into his philosophy, his manifesto, is always at the dinner table. Do you notice that? There's a lot of scenes with people
Yes.
in close quarters sharing food and sharing meals at a table is very communal. You know, you have the neighbors coming in, and this is like the trigger point for John. He's got an audience now to
Yes.
drop all his
Oh.
his
Mm.
horrific, groomy, culty bullshit. So I thought it was really interesting as well. What makes the film feel intimate is the cinematography. There's so much liminal space. The opening of the film, I think it's about 7 or 8 minutes of just a static landscape and a car driving by. So the
Yeah.
landscape's moving, your POV is moving, but the sky stays completely still and static. So it's this feeling of being trapped. And I think the film filters through Jamie in that way. Jamie's trapped, he's trapped in his liminal space, this isolated area. And the actor just conveys it so bloody well through facial expressions, little micro expressions in his face. The way he flinches or he winks slightly, you're like, wow.
His posture.
Oh God,
Just like a
trauma.
full-bodied
That is a
human.
traumatized nervous system. He
Oh.
can't
Yeah,
help
he just looks
the
like he
way.
looks so uncomfortable in his skin every shot of the
Yeah,
film.
he just wants to
like,
crawl out
yeah,
his skin.
yeah.
Yeah, he just seems like he's not mentally present, which again is like such a
Okay.
defense mechanism of someone that's experienced that kind of abuse, is just like wanting to lock yourself away and just not experience what's happening around and in front of and to you. Yeah, and it's so upsetting. It's brilliantly done.
I was talking about this movie to someone yesterday, and I was like, the way I describe Jamie is just it's like blank canvas that's just like blank because of like all the abuse and stuff. And Bunting just tries to throw his worldviews and everything he believes in. It's questionable whether he even believes in any of it or not, or it's just control and everything else. And it's
Right.
sad. And like one of the shots you were talking about, like the mundane nature, and like one of the shots that like I thought was most effective with Jamie is during Troy's torture. He
Oh,
like
God.
gets overwhelmed and he walks out of the house, and
Yeah.
it's close behind him, and it's on the side of him. It shows the background, the neighborhood. It's raining, it's gray, and he's sitting there, and then like all of a sudden these like kids come riding their bikes and they're laughing and talking to each other. So it's showing yeah, you get what I'm saying.
Different worlds. That
Yeah,
separation
exactly.
from normality, and it makes me think as
Yeah.
well about Jamie's trauma. He's stuck in freeze, so you have fight, flight, freeze, and fawn mode as a PTSD response. That whole
Yeah.
film, he's dissociating, and it's really interesting. I think what Kel said at the beginning about his narration, about his telling his version of his story, and that's the one time you hear him speak. For me, the film is him processing his trauma. He's stuck in dissociation mode, and by the end of the film, he's finally able to admit to his reality and what he's been through and what he's done. So he's able to narrate the film in retrospect, and that just makes it seem even sadder. That everything's already happened. The worst thing that could have happened has happened.
Absolutely. And again, like with that opening narration, like you were saying with the dissociation, it's not even like a present thought about the events. It's just him talking
Mm,
about a dream he had, which again
yeah.
is just like so removed and so detached, and it's a really clever monologue because it gives you nothing, but it also tells you everything, you
Mm.
know?
It makes me think of John. John is, if we're led to believe the real case, he's came into Snowtown as a traumatized person. He's been
Hmm.
through the same abuse and trauma that Jamie's been through. I think he recognizes that Jamie's in stuck mode, so he's much more pliable. He's much easier to mold and manipulate. Whereas John has taken a step back from his trauma, and I think he's fully locked into the sociopathic mindset. How can I use my trauma and my philosophy to get people on my side? He's weaponized it.
Oh yeah, I
Yeah.
love the use
And
of
then
the word
something
weaponized
that was
there.
really
Yeah.
oh
Mm.
sorry.
Oh no, go
Something
ahead.
that was really like poignant and like talking about like John is that at the end, Jamie goes in the living room and sees that his little brother has his head shaved, just like John had done to him at the beginning of
Yeah.
it.
God.
Yeah,
Mm.
that was
Yeah, and then his
powerful.
mom tells him like, "Oh, you've got to get your brother out of here,"
Hmm.
basically. And like again, she's seeing what's happening, but she's not able to do anything herself. The scene of her sitting in the bathtub after Troy's
Uh,
disappearance,
Mm.
in like the same camera, like the same angle and
yep.
everything, is just like
Yeah.
it just like
It shows
hits you
that
like a
bathtub a lot,
wall.
and
Oh my gosh, yeah.
yeah, but like so something about the Jamie's mother in real life that I didn't know. I found this out like actually today is that she was actually charged with being involved in the murder of the guy who was like standing in front of the school, except she didn't she passed away unfortunately.
Yes.
But she
Cancer, yeah.
Mm.
but yeah, it's just it's like it's crazy. It just shows like Bunting's, and I'm sorry, I'm kind of like bouncing to a whole other thing, but like Bunting's influence because you can see like it destroys her like for the whole movie, afterwards.
Totally. Yeah, and there's a very brief scene because for the whole thing, John Bunting is very like, very personable and very cool and level-headed, and you can tell that there's just something there that we're not seeing. There's just such a well chiseled mask that he's got on. That there's one scene that I think Jamie goes to his house or something, and he opens a door, and his mom opens the door and tells him, go away. And then John comes in, like,
Mm.
yell and like slams the door, and you see that mask, like that crack behind it for just a
Mhm.
second, and it really shows you
Yeah.
like how terrifying he can be.
Yeah.
Yeah.
That just worked so well for me because it's it's that exact thing. Like, he's so manipulative, and for the editing in the scene where we have the torture scene with Troy, where it's just locked in, like there's barely any cuts.
Mhm.
John Bunting did actually like to sit close to his victims so he could feel their last breath. Like, that was
Yep.
something that he really enjoyed doing during the choking and releasing. Um, I also like I have one thing. I can watch anything, but one thing is like fingernails and toenails. I can't deal with it. So whenever
Mm.
that scene comes up, I have to like do
Fair.
this, and like it's I don't know, it's so
Yeah.
effective for me. Like, it just breaks my soul a little bit. So whenever I see that happen, I'm like, it's too much. And that's, yeah, the whole scene feels like too much, because it just doesn't let you look away at all, which is crazy and brilliantly done.
Yeah,
Mhm.
so
Yeah.
I really like that. I like that scene at the where he comes to the door and screams at Jamie and closes it. But I think another like super effective way that it shows like like all the like a big crack in Bunting's like whole persona thing is that so like he comes in as a family savior. He's like, oh, I'm gonna take care of these kids. I'm gonna love these kids. I'm gonna love you. And then towards the very end, around the same scene as where right before the scene where his brother's head shaved, is he has his brother in the backyard, standing on a chair in a dress holding the books,
Mm.
or I think they're bricks, something. But that shows like it's like this guy who's like supposedly going to be our family savior is now like psychotically like abusing all the kids, and
Yeah.
it just shows
Yeah.
how like truly disgusting of a human, and the fact it also shows that he really doesn't believe in anything he says, because
Totally.
he's like here to save the. It's like I'm sorry if I don't know what I'm saying, but it's like the MAGA save the kids, he's like similar to that in the way
Mm.
that like he comes in with that lie, and then he's here abusing the kids and grooming them towards awful things.
Totally. Yeah.
And
And
go
go ahead,
ahead.
Kelly.
Sorry. Oh, I was gonna say I watched this. They had some of them have very heavy accents, and I'm not good at really heavy accents. So this time I decided to watch it with subtitles, which gave me a greater understanding and appreciation, but also a deeper, disturbed, harrowing look into how homophobic and
Oh God.
how deeply troubling John Bunting's whole like viewpoint about homosexuals and pedophilia and how they're apparently in his mind inherently
Mm.
linked. One goes with each other. So in case nobody else saw this as well, but there were a few things. So Troy, normally we don't see the oldest brother in the meetings. He's just not interested. He's kind of just like whatever. But at one of these meetings, he's involved. They're like, hey, stay. Um, so Bunting asks him what he would do to the pedophiles or the homosexuals in his minds, and Troy says, "Don't touch me. I don't care."
Mm.
Okay, then Bunting's like, "Yep, that's about right." Looks at Jamie because he knows that Troy
Mm.
has raped Jamie in the past and has done it for God knows how long. And then we see Troy is the next to die, and that's when Jamie gets involved in the killings. And so, with the subtitles on in the bathroom, with Troy being strangled and tortured, what he's saying to John, with John right up in his face, like the psychopath he is, he says, "I'm sorry, master. I'm sick. Please cure me."
Mm.
Full
No,
stop.
like, I was just like, the absolute deep, dark brutality of these crimes are seen in that one harrowing scene. Like you said, we only
Mm.
see like one type of scene of each kind of crime that they're committing, but they're enough, you know?
Oh,
So
yeah.
that just brought like this whole extra layer. Like I knew the homophobia was there, but
Mhm.
it is deeply rooted in who John Bunting was as a person. And I find that one of the most like sinister things.
Yeah. And again, it speaks to the fact that this is all truly about power, which they say
Yes.
in a lot of cases, child sexual assault, it is about power. It's
Mhm.
that's, kind of driving force for a lot of it. And for John Bunting, that again is kind of a way for him to perpetuate that cycle, a way for him to find that power, but from a point of like intense anger and fury and just disgust. Whether it's disgust with himself, disgust with, the world around him at large. He did have some very un- previously fringe, now less uncommon beliefs about a lot of things, which is terrifying. But again, like he was really driven to want everyone to believe what he believed and to feel his wrath in that way. And again, I watched it as well with subtitles on at your recommendation, and I'm glad I did, because the other thing I noticed too is the first time I was watching it, didn't truly click into whose voicemails were whose, because they don't ever really, but
Those
having that
voicemails.
connection, like, oh, that's Verna, oh, that's Troy, oh,
Mhm.
that's this person,
That's
and
very
hearing like how many people he kind of went through essentially, and the things he made them say and their messages to their loved ones is chilling and
Mhm.
chilling.
good to be able to read it and see it for like what they were actually saying, I guess.
Yeah.
Yeah, those voicemails, to me, that's the most like that made me the most upset. That was the most upsetting part of the film. I
Mm.
feel like
Mm.
because it's like while it's going, like it's got the killers doing just going about their lives in slow motion, these slow motion shots, and it's got that music you were talking about earlier under it, and then these voicemails, and it's like we don't see what happens to any of them, but we know, and like knowing that like I'm like these people were like just at the end of their life, tortured by this maniac and forced to say these things, we're having to listen to it, and it's like it really brought the horror home for me. A lot more effective
Mhm.
than like if they would have like shown the actual
Mm.
things.
Yeah.
Totally.
It
Yeah.
was a cruelty in it as well. The things that makes him say, like, could have said, he has some people call their mums and say, oh, I've met a boyfriend or a girlfriend. I'm moving up north. But then he's got to add, I fucking hate you. Don't fucking contact me again. It makes him say these cruel, evil, callous things to the people they care about in their dying moments. That's so much worse for me. If he's trying to pass off these voicemails as an excuse to cover his tracks, okay, I can kind of understand the sense of it, but it's the wanton cruelty at the end of it, that disconnection between.
Yeah.
Imagine losing someone you care about, and then the last message you get from is, "I hate your fucking guts. Don't contact me again." Like, oh my god,
Yeah.
Yeah.
And it's
horrible.
also terrible that the police didn't look for a lot of these people because they heard the
No,
voicemails. They're like, sounds legit. And they just dropped
mm,
it. And that's,
nice
and
tied up.
that's, yeah. And the fact that a lot of his victims were chosen based on just like rumors and like speculation and
Yep.
nothing concrete, but he hated them with such a passion that he made them make sure that everyone that they loved and they cared about would have these terrible, terrible last
Hmm.
memories of them too, is just like so sinister.
Really. It really
Hmm.
And
is.
this
Okay.
time, oh sorry.
I was gonna say, let's move into the next section. We kind of touched on this, but this idea, I'm not a big true crime fan. I dabble. But this Cal's kind of brought this up, but like this idea of like exploitation versus true crime. I think this very fine line between glamorizing our killers and the case and everything, and then actually telling the story and showing the victims. There's this a fine line. Relevant and something that just popped up. Netflix has that monster series, and they just released the poster for
Yep.
the Ed Gein aspect. So
What? Yeah. Sexy Ed Gein, why not?
exactly, and I'm
Just
like,
all the execs smoking cigars, like just make them skinny. Like,
absolutely not. And so there's a fine line between doing this. So how do you all think that Snowtown fits into this kind of like the pantheon of true crime cinema? Do you think it, you know, treads that line carefully and well? Do you think it leans too much on exploitation? Why don't we kind of start wrapping up the discussion with your thoughts on that?
for sure.
I feel like, and I was talking about this earlier with someone too, is that I feel like Snowtown is probably one of the least exploitative true crime movies that I've seen. How it ranks for me, because I do like dabble in true crime, is that like the thing that like separates exploitation from true crime a lot, just like actually telling just a story, is that is it trying to like entertain you? Is it trying to like make this thing that's like super entertaining and exciting and da da da? But Snowtown isn't that. Snowtown is it is not entertaining. It's not fun. It just tells the story, but it also, like we've all touched on a few times, it only shows one of each crime, and but it still drives home the horror of it without showing extensive torture scene, extensive essay scenes, etc.
Mhm.
So I believe it's like, it's like I've seen some people online like, oh, it's super exploitive because it's so bleak, and like, no, it's like it's bleak. It's a serial killer story like involving a whole town and abuse. It's as bleak as it comes. So like to tell the story and not be bleak with it would be like just kind of like not telling the story really, But
Yeah, and I think you kind of hit the nail on the head with like bleak and entertainment. It's
uh,
Mhm.
if it was exploitative, they'd be like, "Look at this John Bunting guy! Isn't he a badass? Let's see what he does. Every scene he's killing somebody, and it's so dramatic, and there's bodies in barrels. Oh my God!" It doesn't do that. It like you said, it minimizes the events without minimizing the horrific trauma of it all.
Mhm.
It allows you to kind of like marinate in the terror and like awful like again bleakness of what happened, and there's just like a dirty feeling to it, like it's like a shared secret. And that to me also kind of adds to the fact that it doesn't really feel exploitative. It feels like they just want you to understand.
Mhm.
Also telling it from Jamie's perspective, again, they want you to understand. And that I think, and also as mentioned earlier, casting, not like it's not Tom Cruise as John Bunting, it's it's not Charlie Hunnam as Ed Gein. It's this actor that did this in Australia, but then there's a lot of people you've never seen before, which also kind of adds to the realism because you're not looking at it and you're like, oh, there's this guy I've seen in 27 TV shows before. It's just real people, and that I think also kind of shows a respect and an honesty that
Mhm.
could very well be completely ignored in the hands of another filmmaker. And the fact that this is this director's like feature film debut also is just
Mhm.
extremely powerful.
absolutely.
Yeah, I would agree with Kelly, and also I feel like what separates it from exploitation territory is it's an invitation when you think about it. The documentarian feel it invites you as a voyeur against your will, just like the victims. You're dragged into this claustrophobic, bloody setting against your will, and I think if it was exploitative, like Kel says, you would have glamorizing the killer and whatnot. I thought it was really interesting as well the way the film timeline plays out. Because remember, this was about a decade of serial killings. It's the worst serial killer case in all of history in Australia. It made Adelaide the bizarre
Yeah.
serial killer crime capital of the world. So it's interesting to me that the film doesn't focus on we'll have 10 years of all this horrific stuff, show you all the murders. It's very much a character piece. And the characters it
Mhm.
focuses on are the victims. And it's from their POV, and their POV merges with us. So as an audience, we can empathize from a victim's viewpoint, especially if you've grown up with trauma or grown up in poverty. If you haven't, if you've had a very privileged life, the film drags you in anyway, and it drags you into this world. And I think that it makes you complicit. Whereas when you're watching something like Charlie Hunnam is Ed Gein, you're not complicit. You're detached because you're like, this is fun, this is sexy, this isn't affecting me at all. I think that's a big difference. Plus, Snowtown never got a Netflix documentary, which I think says a lot. They've not had a Netflix special yet. So
Totally. And,
Yeah.
and and
You
those very mundane scenes of just like them going out to birthday
mm,
parties and going like those day-to-day activities of you still get a very strong sense of what their day-to-day life is like.
hmm
And if you are not, from that socioeconomic class and like that area, you see what their life is sort of like on a
hmm
daily basis. You feel what they feel. He does a very, as you said, very effective job of kind of communicating that to you and showing that to you. And it doesn't make it fancy, doesn't make it glamorous, doesn't make it exciting, doesn't make it enticing either, which I think is the other big line in an exploitative film is if they make it feel exciting to you, like, ooh, maybe I can go out and no, that's not
hmm
ever a feeling you experience when watching this film.
it's the
beautifully
Yeah,
mundanity
said.
of it as well. Sorry.
I was like beautifully said. We're about 10 minutes to 2. Sorry, to 5 my time, Eastern time. So I was going to say, people that are watching, thank you. If you got questions for the panelists, for the guests, or whichever comments, questions, please put them into the chat now as we're starting to wind down here. Beautifully said through all of you. Thank you so much for that. I agree. It is not glamorizing. This is not a romanticized version of the Snowtown murders, where Snowtown, only one murder happened, which was Jamie's stepbrother David, which the film ends on. As cops are like figuring stuff out, that's the last murder, and that's the one that happened in Snowtown at that bank that they rented out where all the barrels were found. That's exciting. So thank you for that. So yes, if folks have any questions, Jess, if you have any questions, my tech gremlin, please put them into the chat now. The final thing I'll ask, thank you everybody again for this. Any other recommendations for listeners or for ourselves for stuff that doesn't glamorize the true crime elements, that maybe is another like dark, bleak, kind of accurate true crime film or show? But if you have anything like that, let us all know.
Cropsey came to mind. There was a really interesting documentary. You might have heard of Cropsey. There was these children going missing outside of New York, and the documentary is about this couple who go out to investigate an urban legend of Cropsey, this boogeyman who uses the underground network of tunnels. And as they delve deeper into the legend, they correlate it with a real man. There was a real man who was kidnapping kids and abusing them, and there's this whole conspiracy around it. I would really recommend that one, because again, it deals with the victim's POV and the idea of someone lacking the capacity to be truly evil. There's a lot of grey areas which I find really interesting.
I would first one that comes to mind for me is a movie by Cyan Sono called Coldfish. Coldfish about it's a couple. They were a Japanese couple, and they owned an aquarium, and they would more or less, like, long story short, they would murder people for profit. And it explores the whole, like, it was like a Snowtown, like, not as big of a situation, but it was, in its ugliness, it's similar to Snowtown. And the movie doesn't like shy away from it. I mean, it does show a lot more like gore and actual deaths than Snowtown does, but it still doesn't make it entertaining. It's a hard watch, and it should be, you know.
Yeah, I would say Hounds of Love, which is also Australian,
Yeah, that's a good one.
and based on Australian serial killers David and Catherine Barini, who were arrested and convicted of 4 murders in 1986, I think. But it follows this couple that had the romantic date night idea that they would abduct women on the side of the road, usually teenage girls, bring them back to their house, lock them up, and sort of keep them as a sex slave for a period of time and abuse them horrifically during this process. And this is sort of following the one girl that got away. And it's a fantastic film. Again, it doesn't glamorize anything. It focuses on the victim. It focuses on her story. And it's similar. They had the same kind of MO as like, oh, call your mom and tell her you're going to stay at a friend's house, so you're not coming home, so she knows not to expect you. And they kind of, it follows a lot of the same kind of story beats in a way, but its presentation is very very different. But I really like that one, so I wanted to recommend that. And then for another true crime one, The Golden Glove, just because I think it's rad as hell and really gross. It's so,
yeah, it's gross.
it just again feels so dirty, right? Like it just feels like grimy, and I love that.
That one thing I liked about the Hounds of Love is it doesn't show like any of the, it doesn't fully show any of the essay scenes at all.
Yes,
you know,
exactly. Yeah. It's again like it doesn't, it kind of has that same approach, but not nearly as like deeply upsetting, I guess.
What I liked about Hounds of Love, you spend time with the victim after the fact. You're forced to go through that degradation and that trauma alongside with her. There's no focus on the essay or the sexual elements at all. It's just after what's happened, you're like, God.
Absolutely.
Yeah, I was going to shout out Hounds of Love as well. I'm not familiar with that case, so I'm not sure like how accurate it was, but yeah, all you do see is like the aftermath of the party that couple has. Like you see the like sex toys on the floor and like the bloody like napkins or towels. Like you just see the aftermath, and we can figure it out. Our imagination is wild, so we don't need it. But that ending. The
Joy Division song playing. Oh my God!
It's like I've only watched it once, haven't revisited that dark one, but that was on my list to recommend as well.
Perfect.
God.
In real life, they picked up hitchhikers. So again, vulnerable girls running away from home. You know, you can spot a vulnerable person on the side of a road a mile away, and they come back to our house, have a party. You know, again, like John Bunting, we're the cool adults, totally appropriate for 30-year-olds to hang out with 15, 18-year-old kids.
Oh, for sure.
Yeah,
I saw a
absolutely.
question at the bottom of the screen about what was the question, Jess?
Yes,
What's a good
yes, we
Oh.
have one question. So, after all of this collective trauma, even just talking about this movie, it's like I feel exasperated. I'm sweating. Like I'm not affected by things very easily, but this one just like has burred everything into my being, the Snowtown situation. So yeah, so what's a good wind down movie after such a heavy movie? I guess that's a good point to like self-care when watching these films. Like what do you all do to balance the enjoyment of watching dark cinema, let's say taboo cinema, and then what else do you kind of watch afterwards? Or yeah, what do you guys got on the docket?
I,
That's a great question.
I go for like the first one that popped in my mind when I saw the question was the Machine Girl. Like movies like that, movies that are like still they're horror movies, but they're like silly, they're light, you know,
Tokyo
like
Gore
there's like
Police.
ridiculous gore, you know, like
Yeah.
Tokyo Gore Police would be another one, like
Yep.
stuff like that, you know.
The
I would say,
fun drama, like the fun violence.
Yeah,
yes.
exactly.
And speaking of the fun trauma, the one I just saw last night that I think would be a great, like, it's very much a palate cleanser is the new Toxic Avenger movie. It's just such a delight.
Yay.
It's
So good.
so fun. It's just like
Nice.
it's so like ridiculously gory and gruesome. And I love like all the little like ADR side comments that you kind of hear from like extras in the back. It's just so funny. I love Macon Blair. Elijah Wood's awesome in it. So yeah, that would be my like wind down movie is like go to a cinema, have a nice communal experience with a lot of people that are all having an absolute blast laughing and cheering along to some ridiculous over the top gore.
Yeah.
Together was a good one. The new body
Yes.
horror with Dave
Yeah, that was
Franco
great.
and
Yeah.
Alison Brie. That's a really good kind of wind down movie. It takes
Yeah.
body horror and it doesn't quite make it slapstick because there's a lot of disturbing stuff in there, very disturbing stuff, but there's like a levity to it because you're kind of along for the ride with this very funny, very charming couple. So
Totally.
I'd recommend that one for sure. Yeah.
Excellent. Okay, let me just double check. I don't think there are any other questions, but we're 4 minutes to the hour. Whew. So let's shut this down now that I'm sweating. Oh my goodness. Thank you all so much for being here for this specific movie. I know it's a big ask, so I appreciate you all stepping up to the plate. Sports ball and terrible sports references. Anyways, so taking one for the team. For this side note, the dog who was killed in Snowtown, the dog's name was Kelly.
Oh.
Also, thing I noticed with the subtitles. Thank you, subtitles.
Yes,
I was like,
exactly. Thank you for subtitles.
Yeah.
So sorry, Derek.
That's the name, even though I had subtitles. So I knew that scene was coming, and I was like, "Fuck this!" And I like,
I know.
I always
Literally my
forget about
favorite
that
dog.
scene. Yeah, I always forget about that scene. Then it comes up. I'm like,
Me
oh,
too.
dang it! This movie is really like, oh my god. Okay.
Yeah, exactly. So, oh God, we can go back. We can go into this for another hour, but we won't. So again, thank you to all my guests today and Jessica as my tech gremlin behind the scenes.
Thanks, Jess.
Thank you, Jess.
Thank you again.
Thank you, Jess.
Finally,
Trauma!
yay! Now we finally can cheer because it is over and we don't have to think about Snowtown for a while anyways. So thank you again. Thank you for everybody who showed up. I hope to see you all later at 8 p.m. Eastern time. I have a Discord screening of Lucio Rojas' Trauma from 2017. So
Talk about a wind down movie.
yeah, we're gonna keep this going well into the evening. So
Relax
thank
with a
you
cigarette.
all. Thank you all and rotten
Thank you.
pieces.
Rot in peace. Take care.